So today I thought I'd share some tips in Pro Tools, and namely the mixer and arrange window and shortcuts that help your workflows be really speedy and fast. So this is part one, which is on the mixer, and part two will be in a separate video uploaded right after this, which will be on the arrange window. Thanks for watching. First thing I'd like to discuss is labeling tracks in a very quick manner when you have a lot of tracks to label. For instance, more than one. Let's select the first track we want to label, double click it. Let's see what we want. So let's make this a kick drum, hit OK. And let's hit the second one. Actually, that way is pretty slow. So let's go back to the first way. That's kick. And the actual really fast way to label a bunch in order is hit the command key and arrow to go to my next tracks, and then you can just label it. So for instance, the first one says kick. Now I'm going to label the second one snare. Third one, let's do bottom mic. And last one, let's do, that'd be overhead right or something, or overhead left, and hit OK. Now that's much faster than clicking each one, hitting OK each time for labeling. Next, I'd like to show you how to send things to multiple outputs. So let's select the first track. And for this one, I'd like to send it to output 1 and 2 and keep that, and also send it to bus 39 and 40. So the way to do this is hold down the control key, click on the output of a track, and then select where you want to send it. In this case, bus 39 and 40. And you'll see a plus mark on the left side confirming that it's being sent to another place. Next, I'd like to show you how to do sequential inputs. Say if you're doing drums or instruments and your preamps are in order, you might want to not have to click each one and say, this is input 1, this is input 2, input 3, input 4, if they're in order. So there's actually a shortcut for this. We're going to select all the tracks, shift, and then click. So we select all of them. And all we're going to do is we're going to click the first track, hold down Option and Command, and click the first input where you want to start from. And basically all the inputs would follow in order after that. So we're going to click 1. And now you saw everything followed, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it works the same, say, for instance, if you start at 4, it'll go to 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next thing I'd like to discuss is how to make all tracks the same input or output. Now this is also very simple. Like pretty much you select all the tracks you want. And for instance, let's grab these 4, and you can hold down the Alt key now. And we're going to select the input 1. Say if you're doing the vocals all on the same input and mic, this is something you can use instead of going to all the inputs separately and clicking 1. This saves you time. Another thing I'd like to discuss is a way to reset anything. So if you change your level, for instance, you can click Alt to reset it to its original state. Alt or Option key. I always call that Alt. Another thing I'd like to discuss is how to select all the tracks. Now, I think I mentioned it before, but if you select the first track, then hold down Shift and hold the last and then click the last track that you want, it'll select all of them. Now, say you want every one of these selected but the bottom one. Now, you don't want to have to re-click that all again. So all you have to do is hit the Command key and then click it, and it deselects that. And again, you could deselect anything by holding the Command key, or select all and it'll hold it. Now, one thing in Pro Tools, at least, you can't really customize the stuff that well. I mean, you can go into library folders and move stuff around, but say you want a plugin to always show up in this favorite list here. So what you do is hold down the Command key, click the inserts, and let's grab something that we want to always show up in that list that's not currently there. That looks fine. The XT plugin, which is an ICQ. So now when I click here, the Hoser XT shows up there in our favorite list. Really simple, really handy. On plugins, I kind of like to have a starting point that's my starting point and not necessarily the manufacturer's. So for instance, this is a Slate VMR, which is a great plugin set. What I want to do is kind of set like a template for myself that every time I open it, certain plugins show up. So let's just grab a few. Let's double click EQ Air. Let's grab FG116. And what else do you want here? Good old Revival. So now, for instance, say this is the stuff you want to start with as like your starting chain. So all you have to do in Pro Tools is you're going to click this arrow up here where it says Preset. We're going to do Save Setting As, and I'm going to write Jake Default. Now, that doesn't do anything. That just saves a preset. So if you go down here, you're going to click Set As User Default. Just make sure that in your setting preferences here, that it's the set plugin default to is on user setting and not the factory setting. And then it'll make that, like what we set as user default will be this. So for instance, if I close this and zero it out, user default, no, I want factory default. But if I go to user default instead of the plugin, that'll show up. Really handy. So say on this track here, I want to bypass all the plugins, and I don't want to have to click each one separately and hit command to bypass it, right? Say I have even more plugins, and I just want to hear what it sounded like raw. So there's a very easy way to do this. All you have to do is select the track or multiple tracks that you want, and to bypass all plugins on selected tracks, all you have to do is hit Shift-A to bypass the plugins. And to turn it back on again, just hit Shift-A again, it'll turn it back on. Now, there are some other parameters for this. Now, for instance, if you control click from the one you want to bypass to, say you want to bypass, let me just make a copy of some plugins. Say you have like 5 plugins on here, right? And you want to actually keep the first one, but bypass the rest of them with a shortcut. So the way you do this is you actually control click from the one you want, and it'll bypass the ones under it like this. Control, click. Now it's bypassing all the ones under it. And that's really handy. Say you have always EQ first and you want to leave the EQ and bypass the rest, that'll do that. There's also some other ones to note. I believe if you do Shift E, it'll bypass all the EQs in your session. Shift C will bypass all the compressors. Shift V will bypass the reverbs. Now, what if you have a bunch of buses and you want to do the same thing as we did on the plugins? You want to bypass all them temporarily to hear what it sounds like without your effects or whatever you're bussing. So the way to do this is hit Shift Q. Now, Shift Q will bypass all that. So, and to take it off bypass, Shift Q again.